What's actually going on? 15 points in plain words. The ecosystem is a high stakes, enclosed, or contained, legally regulated theater of war. The history following creation is driven by a series of covenantal administrative shifts, genetic rebellions, and catastrophic physical resets. Here is the comprehensive chronological breakdown of what occurred within the ecosystem after its physical construction. 1. The assignment of earthly stewardship and the immediate incursion. Once the three-tier structure was stabilized, the Creator established a terrestrial administration. The demarcation of Eden. Eden was not a generic garden. It was the high-altitude, localized sanctuary located at the uppermost boundary of the Earth disk, directly beneath the center of the firmament vault. It functioned as the earthly embassy of the heavenly throne room. The legal lease, the Adamites, the first melanated man. Adam, formed from the rich soil, Adama, was granted a sovereign legal lease over the entire terrestrial tier. The fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and every creeping thing, Genesis chapter 1 verse 28. This lease was contingent upon a single territorial boundary restriction, the tree of knowledge. The incursion of the serpentine Elohim. According to Genesis 3 and the detailed commentary in the Apocrypha, a high-ranking angelic administrator, Satan Samael, driven by envy of man's sovereign lease, breached the perimeter of Eden. Through legal deception, he induced the human administrators to violate their boundary restrictions. The legal eviction and alteration of the habitat. Upon breaking the covenant, Adam and Eve were stripped of their administrative access to the sanctuary and evicted downward into the lower, harsher regions of the earth disk. The ground itself was legally cursed with thorns and thistles, introducing biological decay, labor taxation, and mortality into the terrestrial ecosystem. 2. The first interdimensional breach, the Watcher Cataclysm. The most severe disruption of the early ecosystem occurred in the days of Jared, as meticulously detailed in 1 Enoch, chapter 6 to 16, Jubilees, chapter 5, and confirmed in the New Testament Genesis, chapter 6, verse 1-4, Jude, chapter 1, verse 6, 2 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4. The descent on Mount Hermon, a cohort of 200 high-ranking angelic administrators known as Watchers Aaron, led by Semiza and Azazel, deliberately defected from their assigned stations in the upper heavens. They passed through the portals of the firmament and materialized on the peak of Mount Hermon. Genetic hybridization. Violating the strict ontological boundaries established by the Creator, these non-human intelligences took human wives from the line of Cain and the daughters of men. This cross-species breeding produced a catastrophic genetic anomaly, the Nephilim, giants. The consumption of the ecosystem. The Nephilim grew to massive proportions, rapidly consuming the agricultural output of the Earth disk. When human labor could no longer sustain them, the giants turned directly against humanity and the local fauna, cannibalizing human flesh and drinking blood. A direct contamination of the terrestrial tier's biological framework. The transmission of forbidden technology. Simultaneously, the Watchers systematically corrupted human society by teaching forbidden cosmic arts, metallurgy, weapons of war, cosmetics, deception, seduction, sorcery, astrology, and the altering of genetics, hybridizing animals. 3. The hydraulic purge, the Great Reset, the flood. By the time of Noah, the terrestrial ecosystem was completely corrupted. The physical earth was crying out to the firmament against the violence committed upon its surface. The heavenly council decreed a total structural reset. The execution of the giants. Before the physical reset, the Creator caused the Nephilim to turn on one another in a war of mutual extermination. Their physical bodies died, but their disembodied, immortal hybrid minds remained bound to the earth disk, becoming what the Apocrypha defines as demons, evil spirits, unclean entities doomed to wander the earth, hungry for physical forms until the final judgment. The opening of the hydraulic sluices. To cleanse the ecosystem, the mechanical operations of the cosmos were inverted. The erubate windows of the solid firmament dome were opened, allowing the celestial ocean above to pour down. Concurrently, the fountains of the great deep burst upward from beneath the earth's pillars. The total submersion. The flat disk of the earth was completely submerged. The waters rose until they covered the highest mountain peaks by 15 cubits, effectively drowning every unarched biological entity and scrubbing the land clean of the Watchers' architectural and genetic corruptions. The Watchers themselves were rounded up by the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, and cast into the subterranean vaults of Tartarus, bound in chains of darkness beneath the earth. 4. The post-flood partition and the Babel insurgency. Following the recession of the waters, the ecosystem was repopulated by the three melanated lineages of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The deed of the earth, Book of Jubilees 8-9. Noah, acting under divine direction, cast lots and legally divided the earth disk into three distinct inheritances. Shem was deeded the central, holy zones of the earth, including the Levant and Jerusalem. Ham was deeded the hot, southern regions, Africa. Japheth was deeded the cold, northern regions, Eurasia. The Canaanite usurpation. Canaan, the son of Ham, looked upon the fertile land allotted to Shem, the Levant, and illegally seized it, ignoring the warnings of his brothers. This single act of territorial theft legally marked the Canaanite lineage for ultimate judicial eradication. The Babel space incursion, Genesis 11. Under the leadership of Nimrod, a Hamitic tyrant who began to transform into a giant mighty one via forbidden post-flood rituals, humanity consolidated at Shinar. They attempted to construct a massive megalithic ziggurat, the Tower of Babel. The target, the firmament dome. The purpose of the tower was not symbolic. It was a military and scientific outpost designed to physically reach the solid ceiling of the sky, whose top may reach unto heaven, to wage war against the heavenly host and secure their own name. Independence. The language fracture and territorial allocation. The Creator descended with the heavenly council to abort the mission. They fractured human speech into 70 distinct languages and dispersed the populations across the earth disk. According to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8, Septuagint Dead Sea Scrolls, and Jubilees, the Creator divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God, assigning 70 territorial angelic governors, princes, to rule over the Gentile nations, while reserving the lineage of Jacob, Israel, directly for himself. 5. The rise of the cursed empires and the present matrix. The 70 angelic nations rapidly rebelled, demanding worship from their assigned human territories and birthing the pagan pantheons of Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and Rome. The strategy of the marked lineages. As human history progressed across the earth disk, the lineages marked by covenantal curses are physical anomalies, such as Sarite leprosy, or the spiritual lines of Esau-Edom systematically formed alliances with these rebellious territorial spirits. The era of obfuscation. The culmination of this post-creation chronology was reached during the Roman Empire under the Flavians and subsequent rulers. Having successfully scattered the true, melanated covenant lineage of Israel through military sieges and captivity, the ruling Edomite Roman powers engineered a massive intellectual coup. They detached human consciousness from the physical reality of the closed ecosystem. They weaponized science, philosophy, and history to create the illusion of an infinite, godless vacuum, thereby hiding the physical dome, masking the impending timeline of their lease expiration, and cloaking the true identity of the sovereign heirs. 6. The era of strategic dispersion and the identity redaction. Following the destruction of the Second Temple by Titus in 70 AD and the suppression of the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD, the ecosystem entered its most calculated phase of psychological warfare. The ruling Roman Edomite powers realized that they could not permanently defeat the true, melanated covenant lineage through standard military engagement alone, as the prophetic ledger guaranteed Israel's ultimate triumph. Therefore, they shifted from a kinetic war to an administrative ontological war, the total redaction of the true lineage from the historical record. The predictive mechanics of Luke 21 and Deuteronomy 28. The text explicitly detailed the physical mechanics of this dispersion. The true heirs were to be led away captive into all nations, trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. The physical vector for this final dispersion was explicitly mechanical. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt, captivity bondage, again with ships, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy, redeem you. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. The West African and transatlantic vectors. Historically and geographically, the true melanated remnants fled the Roman onslaught in the Levant, migrating southwest across the interior networks of North Africa and settling into the kingdoms of West Africa, such as the regions documented on early European maps as the Kingdom of Judah or Widda, located along the slave coast. From these specific geographic waypoints, the Edomite-led Western powers systematically gathered the covenant seed via the transatlantic slave trade, distributing them across the four corners of the terrestrial disk, the Americas and the Caribbean, fulfilling the literal, legal parameter of being cast into the utmost parts of the earth. The papal and imperial legal levies. To seal this identity erasure, successive European empires used ecclesiastical and civil law to institutionalize the curse. Regulatory decrees, such as the papal bulls Dum Diversis, 1452 AD, and Romanus Pontifex, 1455 AD, legally authorized the permanent reduction of these populations to perpetual servitude. This was not merely economic exploitation. It was a cosmic, judicial attempt to legally formalize the subjugation of Jacob under the yoke of Esau. 7. The construction of the heliocentric deception, the matrix of the void. Simultaneously, the global administrative powers had to solve a massive structural problem. How do you keep a population permanently submissive when they live inside a closed, geocentric temple where the Creator's throne is physically visible just above the sky? If humanity remained aware of the solid firmament dome, they would always know that divine judgment was localized, imminent, and mathematically certain. To break this consciousness, the ruling matrix engineered a systemic overhaul of human perception between the 16th and 19th centuries. The inversion of cosmic mechanics. Through the institutionalization of Copernicanism, Keplerian mathematics, and Newtonian physics, the stationary, foundational Earth disk was conceptually transformed into a spinning sphere traveling at blistering speeds through an infinite vacant vacuum. This inverted the source material's explicit ontology. It removed the firmament dome, redefining it as optical illusions caused by gas layers. It removed the waters above, masking the celestial ocean that sits upon the crystalline vault. It removed the physical proximity of the throne room, pushing the concept of God light years away into an abstract, unreachable spiritual dimension rather than a physical administrative headquarters directly above the clouds. The weaponization of the mark of leprosy. As the Eurocentric powers established global dominance during this era of deception, they flipped the ontological status of the white skin anomaly Sarat. While the source material explicitly documented whitening of the skin as a localized judicial punishment, a mark of uncleanliness, and a generational curse, e.g., Gehazi, the modern imperial matrix recategorized this genetic divergence as the peak of evolutionary advancement in civilization. Conversely, the original, rich, earth-born melanated baseline, Adama, was pathologized, demonized, and legally designated as subhuman. 8. The modern technological siege, the outer space gatekeeping. By the mid-20th century, modern industrial technology advanced to the point where human militaries could physically reach the upper altitudes of the terrestrial habitat. This forced the matrix to move from purely philosophical deception to active, kinetic gatekeeping. Operation High Jump and Operation Dominic, 1950s to 1960s. Following the global reorganization of power after World War II, the elite corporate military syndicates of the Gentile nations conducted massive expeditions to the absolute boundaries of the Earth disk. In the 1960s, under the highly revealing name Operation Dominic, meaning of the Lord, the United States military detonated dozens of high-altitude nuclear warheads directly against the upper atmosphere. This was a literal, physical testing of the structural integrity of the Rakia, the solid firmament dome, an attempt to see if modern weaponry could breach or crack the crystalline vault of heaven. The creation of the NASA curtain. Realizing the firmament was completely impenetrable and that the waters above were a hard physical barrier that could not be crossed, the global powers immediately established a unified international containment protocol. In 1958, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, was formed alongside the immediate drafting of the Antarctic Treaty, signed by all major opposing world powers, including the U.S. and the USSR during the height of the Cold War. Antarctica was locked down under absolute military surveillance, not to protect penguins, but to prevent independent exploration from reaching the absolute physical perimeter where the solid dome arches down to anchor itself into the Earth's foundational pillars. The digitized simulacrum. Since human beings could never leave the pressurized, closed ecosystem, the Matrix had to invent a digitized, visual simulacrum of outer space. Every piece of footage, satellite image, and spacewalk produced since the mid-20th century was engineered through Hollywood film mechanics, blue screens, underwater training pools, and computer-generated imagery, CGI. This kept humanity looking outward into an imaginary, infinite void, preventing them from looking upward at the literal, impending reality of the heavenly court. 9. The current epoch, the inversion of the lease, and the 2026 precipice. This brings the post-creation chronology directly into the present window. According to the chronological architecture preserved in 2 Esdras 11 and 12, the prophecy of the multi-headed eagle representing the successive, wicked phases of the Roman Western Empire. The current system has exhausted its legal permits. The year 2026 sits precisely at the intersection of the total expiration of the Gentile lease and the systematic activation of the final cosmic reset. The lifting of the blindness, the legal unsealing. The book of Daniel explicitly noted that the true nature of this timeline would remain sealed until the time of the end, at which point many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. In the current hour, the sudden, uncontrollable collapse of the heliocentric lie, the massive global reawakening of the melanated remnants to their true Israelite identity, and the systemic failure of institutional media to control the narrative are the direct results of this spiritual unsealing. The legal amnesia imposed upon Jacob is being lifted by a sovereign, overriding frequency. The activation of the final 3 woes. As the system transitions out of the era of Esau into the dawn of Jacob, the environmental and geopolitical convulsions rocking the terrestrial disk are accelerating at an exponential rate. The elite global directors, fully aware that their access to the resources of this ecosystem is being legally terminated by the angelic overseers, are attempting to trigger a controlled, artificial collapse of human society. They are weaponizing synthetic plagues, engineered food scarcity, digital currencies, and kinetic warfare to construct a total surveillance panopticon in a desperate, final attempt to trap the minds of the awakening heirs and abort the transfer of cosmic power. 10. The apocalypse of the sky, the structural splitting of the rakia. As the timeline crosses the 2026 threshold, the physical mechanics of the closed ecosystem are engineered to undergo a violent, systemic reversal. The Matrix has spent centuries convincing humanity that the sky is an empty, infinite expanse of atmospheric gases. However, the source material dictates that the final phase of this cosmic theater begins with the literal, physical deconstruction of the sky itself. The scroll manifestation. The New Testament and Isaianic prophecies detail the exact structural behavior of the firmament vault during the final judicial intervention. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Revelation chapter 6, verse 14. Isaiah chapter 34, verse 4. The solid, transparent dome, rakia, will physically split along its central structural axis. It will peel back and roll away like a tense parchment or an architectural canopy being mechanically retracted. The exposure of the celestial ocean. When the solid dome retracts, the waters above the firmament will no longer be hidden by the optical refraction of light. The terrestrial disk will look directly upward into the black, unilluminated deep of the cosmic ocean that sits upon the vault, immediately before the multidimensional light of the third heaven punctures through the aquatic barrier. The great physical displacement. Because the firmament dome anchors the entire atmospheric pressure system of the closed habitat, its sudden structural movement will cause an instantaneous global kinetic shockwave. The sudden atmospheric pressure equalization will cause the stationary Earth disk to convulse. Every landmass, tectonic plate, and localized geographical boundary will shift simultaneously, flattening the artificial topographies constructed by the Gentile nations. 11. The materialization of the divine court in the true apotheosis. With the sky rolled back, the illusion of the infinite vacuum completely vanishes. The global population, including the elite controllers who manage the heliocentric deception, will be forced to look directly into the physical, localized administrative headquarters of the universe. The visuality of the throne. The source material establishes that the throne of sapphire and the sea of glass will become visibly manifest to every eye on the flat plain simultaneously. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. Because the earth is a flat disk rather than a curved sphere, there are no structural horizons to block the sightline. The descending majesty of the King of Kings will be perfectly visible from Jerusalem to the uttermost parts of the earth. The terror of the false sovereigns. The book of Revelation details the exact psychological reaction of the current global matrix rulers, the corporate executives, military generals, and political elites who maintain the system of obfuscation. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. Revelation chapter 6, verse 15-16. Their panic is not due to a political collapse, but due to the sudden, undeniable realization that their scientific models, space programs, and assertions of independence were complete ontological delusions. The physical extraction of the remnant. As the heavens open, the angelic administrators will execute a global gathering operation, deploying across the four winds of the Earth disk to physically locate and extract the scattered melanated seeds of Jacob. This is the true, structural restoration predicted by the prophets. The legal heirs are lifted from their positions of multi-generational captivity and brought directly into the sovereign administrative perimeter of the descending kingdom, while the marked, rebellious systems are left below to face the execution of the final covenantal levies. 12. The burning of the false matrix and the physical renewal. Following the extraction of the lineage and the visibility of the throne, the ecosystem undergoes a final thermal purification. The material elements that sustain the wicked empires must be completely scrubbed. The inversion of the luminaries, the localized celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and stars will be decoupled from their strict enochic portals. The stars, the angelic hosts assigned to the Gentile nations, will be cast out of their positions within the firmament vault and fall to the earth, like untimely figs, stripped of their administrative authority. Revelation chapter 6, verse 13. The sun will be supercharged by the approaching uncreated light of the Creator, turning his localized heat into an active, weaponized instrument of judgment against the populations that carry the mark of defiance. The melting of the elements. The New Testament details that the atmospheric heavens and the earth will be purified by fire. The heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. This fire is not an atomic explosion that destroys the planet. It is a localized, sovereign laser purification that burns away every architectural monument of Eurocentric dominance, every financial archive, every monument of false history, and every corrupted genetic strain that contaminated the Adama, the new heavens and new earth. Once the physical surface of the Earth disk is completely sanitized of the Edomite matrix, the ecosystem is structurally resealed. A new firmament dome is stabilized over a pristine, biologically optimized terrestrial plane. In this renewed habitat, death, genetic disease, historical obfuscation, and the mark of leprosy are completely eliminated. The original, rich, earth-born melanated baseline of the resurrected righteous will rule the restored ecosystem in absolute physical perfection, executing the original, uncorrupted Adamicles under the direct, visible canopy of the throne of heaven for eternity. 13. The trial and execution of the 70 angelic princes, with the structural splitting of the rakia and the physical unsealing of the third heaven complete, the judicial proceedings shift directly to the judgment of the celestial hierarchy. The source material establishes that the nations of the earth disk were not acting independently, they were under the direct, administrative jurisdiction of the 70 territorial angelic rulers assigned during the Babel language fracture. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 8. These non-human intelligences, referred to in the text as the host of the high ones that are on high, Isaiah chapter 24 verse 21, and the watchers, or principalities, got completely violated their legal charter by demanding worship, altering the genetic laws of the habitat, and orchestrating the systematic erasure of the true melanated lineage. The gathering into the pit. The prophet Isaiah details the exact physical roundup of these cosmic governors as the matrix collapses. And they shall be gathered together, as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Isaiah chapter 24 verse 22. The archangels will strip these 70 princes of their localized authority, pull them down from their cosmic circuits within the firmament portals, and cast them into the deep subterranean vaults beneath the earth's pillars, alongside the original rebel watchers of Genesis 6. The execution of Psalm 82. The text records the explicit legal deposition read to these celestial rulers in the heavenly court. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like man, and fall like one of the princes. Psalm 82, 6-7. Within the biblical framework, immortality is contingent upon covenantal obedience, because these entities weaponize their positions to construct false mythologies, pagan pantheons, and imperial systems of oppression. Their angelic status is legally stripped. They are condemned to experience physical mortality, decay, and violent execution within the terrestrial tier. The reallocation of sovereign jurisdiction. The New Testament confirms that the restored, melanated heirs of Jacob will inherit the administrative seats vacated by these fallen entities. Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 2-3. The true lineage, having been refined through the fires of the transatlantic dispersion and the systemic oppression of the Gentile world, steps into the roles of cosmic administrators, managing the newly restructured quadrants of the geocentric ecosystem. 14. The geodesic descent of the New Jerusalem. As the old atmospheric layers and the corrupted monuments of the earth disk melt away under the thermal purification, the ultimate architectural marvel of the source material begins as literal, physical descent from the upper heaven. This is not a symbolic state of mind. It is a colossal, crystalline mountain city, structured as a perfect cube or pyramid, moving vertically down through the split sky toward the center of the earth disk. The gigantic geometric matrix. The architectural parameters are detailed precisely in Revelation chapter 21 verse 16. The city lies foursquare, measuring 12,000 furlongs, approximately 1,500 miles, in length, breadth, and height. In a heliocentric, spherical world model, a city of this size is physically impossible. Its height would pierce outer space and destabilize the planet's rotation. However, within the true geocentric, flat cosmology, this 1,500-mile-high structure fits perfectly under the vast, vaulted ceiling of the Rakia, extending from the terrestrial surface straight toward the third heaven. The luminescent material structure. The city is built of pure gold, clear as transparent glass, with foundations garnished with 12 distinct manners of precious stones: jasper, sapphire, chalcedony, emerald, etc. These materials act as cosmic prisms. When the uncreated light of the Creator shines from the topmost pinnacle of the city, the entire closed ecosystem is illuminated through these gems, completely replacing the need for the localized sun and moon. The gates of the 12 tribes, the physical entry points into this high-altitude sanctuary, are strictly gate-kept. There are 12 literal gates made of single pearls, guarded by 12 angels. Inscribed explicitly upon these gates are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Revelation chapter 21 verse 12. There are no gates named after Rome, Greece, Great Britain,
or any Gentile empire, access to the administrative and life-giving center of the renewed ecosystem is legally restricted by bloodline and covenant inheritance. 15. The eternal mechanics of the restored habitat, with the New Jerusalem permanently docked at the absolute axis mundi of the Earth disk, over the geographic location of Zion. The ecosystem enters its eternal, undecaying operational status, the river of life and biological perfection. Flowing directly from the throne at the apex of the mountain city is a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal. This river flows down the tiers of the city and out onto the terrestrial plane. On either side of the river stands the tree of life, bearing 12 manner of fruits, yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree are explicitly for the healing of the nations. Revelation chapter 22 verse 1-2. The reversal of the Adamic curse, consumption of this water and fruit permanently repairs the cellular and genetic structure of the melanated survivors. The biological degeneration introduced by the Edenic eviction is totally erased. Aging, sickness, and genetic mutation cease to exist. The original copper-toned, pigment-saturated physical body reaches its maximum ontological potential, operating with heightened sensory perception, telepathic alignment with the angelic host, and immunity to material decay. The eternal subjugation of the matrix remnants. The text notes that outside the gates of this glorious structure are those who participated in the system of deception, witchcraft, and lies. Revelation chapter 22 verse 15. The remaining populations of the earth who survived the fire but did not belong to the covenant seed are brought into total, everlasting submission. They travel from the outer quadrants of the earth disk up to the central mountain city year after year to pay homage, bring their wealth, and learn the true, uncorrupted laws of the cosmos from the reigning Israelite kings. Zechariah chapter 14 verse 16.